Go go.
Go, go, girls. Go,
I
go,
hardly
girls.
know go.
Go, go, gadgets. Minimize screen. Boop.
Whoa.
Welcome back to Coffee and Chat, the show
With the
where I have a
coffee.
guest on and I chat to people while drinking coffee. We
Indeed.
have we have Krendar on, and he today wishes to
Yee.
talk about.
Tabletop games. A couple more specifically. So since you've been doing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, of course, and remember there was that one video we watched on towards the end of Spirited Rambling stuff there. What was that old man's name? The guy that's like on drugs and raps about stuff. Dracula Flows or something like that.
That's right, where all the different
Hmm.
factions.
Yeah, there was. We watched that one where it had all the vampire clans, and I was commenting about how I had never heard of half the ones that came up, but you were nodding along and being like, "Yeah, I know these." So I think you know more about the overall Vampire the Masquerade lore than I do. I don't know if you know much about the rest of the overall greater world of darkness, as they call it, that White
Only
Wolf
that it
does.
exists, and that it follows its own like unique rules and has its own
Yeah.
backstory and shit.
So White Wolf does an interesting thing with that, where uh, they call it World of Darkness not just because stories are grim, because not all the stories have to be grim. Although, of course, Vampire lends itself to that. But there are other games. They do a thing where they have multiple different games that are all part of the same setting, and they all use the same game mechanics so that they can all interact with each other. Even though you buy them as separate games, they're technically one big game, but each one has its own separate rule book. Um, and one of those other games is called Mage: The Ascension. They all follow the format of being like noun, the description,
Mm.
Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Ascension, Werewolf the Apocalypse, etc., etc. They've got a whole bunch of
Timmy
different
the
ones.
horror.
Wait, what?
Timmy the horror.
I don't know what that is.
I just made it up.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, so they've got a bunch of other ones. It's interesting the selection that they have at the banner at the top of here, because none of the ones at the top of here are related, but they're like these things here are not part of World of Darkness, but Mage is, Werewolf is. I'm not sure I think either Werewolf or Vampire was their first one, but
Exalted? I might
um,
have heard of Exalted.
I've played Exalted. It's not part of World of Darkness, like I said, but it's actually a fantasy genre game, but it's like higher power levels, like a high fantasy. It's a weird one. I wasn't super happy with how the game mechanics worked out, but if you notice to the upper right of that is Scion that I mentioned. I feel like Scion evolved from Exalted because it has a lot of similar game mechanics, but they feel more refined, almost like I don't know if it was the intention or not, but it was like Exalted was like the prototype that later became Scion. Um, but yeah, Scion is one I wanted to talk about a bit as well. Um, which one do you want to hear about first, Scion or Mage, or did you want to save one of them for another
Well, we're
chat?
on Mage now. We might as well start here.
True. All right. So the idea with Mage is instead of being a vampire or a werewolf, you're just a person who has a natural spark of magic in your soul or whatever, right? It's one of those stories where even if you learn stuff about magic, you still have to sort of have the natural ability in you, sort of like, you're born a Jedi or you're not, kind of thing.
Mm.
Cough, cough, ignoring midichlorians. But you're born with it or you're not. You're a wizard or you're a muggle, kind of thing. Uh, and they have a similar thing, and this is again something White Wolf does across all of their games, or at least all of their World of Darkness games, where they have a similar setup to clans in a way. Like Werewolf has tribes, Mage has uh, social groups called traditions, and they all do their magic differently. So instead of having disciplines like vampires have, they have something called magical spheres, which is spheres of magic. In other words, types of things you can affect with your magic. Um, so like life magic, forces magic, time magic, mind magic. Just describes the kinds of things you can affect with your spells. But the difference being that how with vampire, the disciplines the disciplines you learn come from your bloodline, come from your clan, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they can learn them across clans. Like you can potentially learn potence no matter what clan you are, because potence is something only a couple of clans naturally get, but it's not like it's a closely guarded secret kind of thing. But then there's other disciplines that are more heavily guarded secrets that a clan will be very jealously guarded the secrets of, such as the Tremere aren't teaching blood sorcery to anybody if you're not a Tremere, kind of thing. The Gangrel probably aren't going to teach you Protean, etc.
Mm.
Whereas with Mage, there's 9 spheres, and all mages can learn any of the spheres. But each tradition specializes in one of them and sort of has their culture wrapped around that. Uh, for example, one of the traditions is basically the ones that specialize in life magic are basically like a druidic group, and they're very heavily based on real life Wicca slash paganism slash witchcraft. They're pretty much a 90% copy of that, and they're called the Verbena. And each tradition will have, they call it their paradigm. It's basically they all view how magic works differently, because it comes down to it. As long as you have the spark of magic, you the way you do magic is up to you. As long as you believe and you have the will, you can do magic however you want. But each tradition has their own way of viewing magic and how it works, and that different way of teaching it. So the Verbena do their life magic, well, all magic really, but life is their specialty. They do it based on how. Sorry, I just realized I forgot to open the stream and see chat. I can just grab that while I'm talking. But yeah, they do their magic similar to how real life paganism would do their rituals of things. And so with each tradition, you have both different ways of looking at how magic works and also just like a different culture in general. But the thing that's most interesting about Mage is the way that the actual spheres of magic work is because they allow for a lot of player creativity. Unlike Vampire, where you have like the disciplines say, hey, if you've got like Protean 1, you can see in the dark because you've got red glowing eyes. If you've got Protean 2, you can grow claws and you can do this. Like, it's always very specifically, this does this exact thing, right? But with Mage, it's more of a generalized description of the kinds of things you can do, and then you just sort of make up your own shit from there. For example, with life, I think it's either 2 or 3. There's an effect where you can change that says you can change one form of simple life into another form of simple life, and they define simple life as like insects and plants. So you could do like, oh, I found a tulip. I'm gonna change that into a rose, or I'm gonna change this bee into an ant, or whatever the hell you want to do for whatever reason.
Can they
And you can just sort
change
of make up your own
things?
shit. Hmm.
Can they
Hmm.
change when they use their magic? Does it pull from like their internal like mana, spirit, chi? Like what's the?
Um, there's not a resource you have to spend to do it, but they do have a resource they can collect to boost their ability to do it, make it easier, called quintessence. But that's basically just kind of like saying mana or chi or whatever you want to call it. Actually, fitting you should mention chi because one of the traditions is basically Shaolin monks. They're the ones that
Mm.
specialize in mind magic, so they do Shaolin discipline style stuff for their magic. Um, and they have an interesting one actually. At one point, there's something called rotes in the book, ROTE. You know the phrase like doing something by rote.
Yeah.
So they have a thing where they, rather than just winging it and making up a magic effect as they go, sometimes they find, like a mage will find a certain thing they've done that they found really effective. So they do it multiple times and practice it and turn it into a rote, which is a way that will make it easier and more effective to do repeatedly. And I forget what they're called. I forget the tradition's name, but the Shaolin monk guys, even though they specialize in mind, they came up with a very interesting effect using a different sphere called correspondence, which is the magic of distances and locations. And one of the things you can do with correspondence, I forget how many dots you need for this, but one of the things it can do is co-location, where you can make yourself exist in multiple points in space at the same time.
Okay.
But you're not making copies of yourself. So each one of these co-locations of yourself is doing the exact same thing because it's just the one you. You just exist in multiple places at once. So they made this rote called the Kick of the Four Winds, which you may have seen something similar in video games before, where they basically do like, I forget the name of the type of kick. It's the one where they lean back on one leg and kick straight out with their other leg.
Oh yeah, yeah. Stuff that you see in like Mortal Kombat
Like
and
a,
shit like that.
I think sometimes they call it a crane kick or something. Um, but basically they do that and then they co-locate themselves magically at the same time so that there's four copies of them surrounding the enemy from all four major points. And they're basically kicking the guy from four different sides at the same time. Brutal.
Uh, so tell us about the setting. Is it the same setting as other things, or is it its own
Well,
thing?
it's World of Darkness. It's the same setting as Vampire. It's modern
Okay.
day,
So
and
how does this factor into the to like the kindred stuff and other things like do the Tremere play a factor into it or
I think
seeing
they
them?
mostly stay separate. But I do believe that Tremere, like we know that Tremere came from human mages that found a way to turn themselves into vampires. So I think they may have been these types of mages originally.
Okay, okay. So
Oh,
there's
and sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm saying that there's like there is a crossover, but it's very vague. Like the way Conan is
Yeah,
technically the same universe as Lovecraft.
it's slightly more connected than that, but it's yeah, like you're not gonna have it be they're not constantly interacting with each other every single day.
Hmm.
I would say vampire and werewolf have more of a connection to each other because they're natural enemies. Because like the werewolves are basically Gaia's champions that are fighting for Mother Earth to get rid of everything unclean and corruptive, which is, that's one of the things vampires are. So they're natural enemies.
Hmm.
Vampires are the prey of werewolves. One of the many reasons the masquerade exists, not just to hide from humanity, but to hide from the werewolves. Whereas the mages don't have that kind of link. Uh, Although I would have to imagine the Verbena probably get along pretty well with the werewolves in general because they're both very pro Mother Earth, and technically high levels of life magic could be used to shapeshift. So a
So
high level life mage could pretend to be a werewolf if they wanted to be.
as somebody who is big into a settings like backstory and lore and all that,
Hmm.
what's the general gist of the mages? Like, where, for example, does the magic come from? Is there a fountainhead
Oh,
of it?
that I don't remember. To be fair, I am talking about this game after having not played it for over a decade, but uh, it's just got interesting ideas. I really like the freeform magic thing. Um, so I'm not 100% sure about what the origin of the magic is meant to be, but um, yeah, I just really like how each clan, or sorry, each tradition has its own thing. By the way, I just double checked it. It's the Akashic Brotherhood, is what they're called, the Shaolin type guys.
All right, Mage Simpson fandom. Let's see, the
Yeah,
really cool artwork or whatever on it.
yeah. I'm not even sure which edition of book I have. I know this is one of the older editions I've got, but Also, by the way,
That's
have you ever heard anybody derisively referring to something called New World of Darkness or NWOD?
I've heard NWAD. I have no idea what it is.
So it stands for New World of Darkness. At one point, White Wolf just kind of lost their minds and decided they were gonna like reboot all their games and have like new stories, like different clans, different traditions, different rules for how things work. Almost like a they basically went D&D Fourth Edition on World of Darkness at one point,
Okay.
and much like Fourth Edition D&D, people largely hated it, or at
Which was the
least
style at the time.
yeah, at least the existing player base largely hated it. Uh,
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, let's see the main idea. Reality is not fixed, but rather a set of agreed upon assumptions enforced by the collective will of humanity. So the what's it? The zeitgeist, the sleepers.
Basically,
Mages are those who recognize the reality is not static and realize that through the application of their will, usually channeling through the rituals or other mythical or scientific practices, reality can be changed. So basically,
hmm
you think it, you can do it, that sort of
yeah,
thing.
a couple of points of that there being like you call it the zeitgeist, which is a perfect term for it. The in game they tend to call it the consensus. Uh,
Let's click on the
and
sleepers,
the
I'm
reason
guessing.
why it says mystical or scientific principles there is
Mm.
two of the traditions are actually what you would call technomancers.
Yeah, I'm seeing
Especially the
technocrats here.
technocrats is a very different thing. That is
Oh.
actually a villain group. The technocracy is a
Mm.
villain group, which they are basically they actually have okay. I don't know what they call their version of traditions, but they have a variation of tradition that is called the Men in Black.
The five metal
But
dragons, typical black-headed
they're
mustaches and cannons.
basically capital T capital M and the man who are
Ah,
trying to enforce the consensus as reality, and basically they're a bunch of tyrants and fascists that are trying to make reality be what they want it to be and remain in charge and
so
all of
Abstergo
that
then,
kind of thing.
basically.
They're basically a magic abstergo, yes.
Specifics of their own belief called the paradigm. Guides them into one of the nine mystical traditions.
Mhm.
One of the five conventions of the technocracy.
Oh, that's right.
One
That's what they call their traditions. They call them conventions, right?
or to strike out on their own as disparates. Marauders.
I think that yeah, the
Um,
Disparate is kind of like the equivalent of the Empire Caitiff,
mm, although
the non-clan clan.
I'd also say a grey mage. Grey mage, a grey Jedi would be another good example, maybe.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Marauders, mages whose paradigms have overwhelmed their sense of reality. I'm guessing they're the crazy ones.
Sounds like it. Yeah,
So
they're like
avatars have been warped.
the like chaos sorcerers or something.
Avatars.
Avatar is basically a magically awakened soul, more or less.
Okay. You might have
Yeah, actually, hold
ads
on.
on
They
these.
they had a good one-liner at the top there.
Okay.
What was it the portion of an individual's soul which is the source of an awakened mage's ability to perform magic? Yeah,
Of ascension. Achieves ultimate power of reality. Oh, so they reach nirvana.
basically.
Okay. Is that the end goal? Similar vampire states of Gok Gokoda?
Gol- Golconda? I don't know anything about that.
Few and any game rules present for the actual process. One thing I've noticed, this game is very fluid. It seems like it's a vague outline rather than these are fixed rules.
Yeah, yeah, like that really goes along with how the magic works. Um, which is pretty much the main reason I brought this up in the first place because it's just interesting. Oh, and
Hmm.
by the way, another thing that's funny too. Um, one thing they've done, I think they did this in the tradition books. Like, have you ever seen a vampire clan book?
Uh, no.
So they did this thing where each they would put out like a small book, like maybe like 50 to 100 pages each. Uh, that was like specific to each clan. Like you'd have like the Bruja clan book, the Gangrel clan book, and it's just like additional information to deep dive into each clan's
Oh,
culture and stuff more. And at the end of each one, like they did a similar thing for the Mage tradition books too, right? And at the end of each tradition book, they would give you some examples of like, here are some famous characters from history or fiction that you may have heard of that are secretly mages that belong to this tradition, but you didn't know because they were hiding it from humanity.
okay.
Um, and Jimi Hendrix is one of them, and Rasputin is one of them. Not that one's not a
Nice.
surprise.
Yeah.
Obviously Rasputin, but yeah, Jimi Hendrix. He was secretly a member of a tradition that is they are the ones that specialize in time magic, and they're called the Cult of Ecstasy. And their paradigm, in other words, the way they do magic, and each tradition has different tools and like foci they use as well to help focus their will, right?
Hmm.
The whole thing with the cults of ecstasy is their paradigm is doing magic through altered states of awareness. So they have foci. So their foci are basically vices. Any kind of vice you
Oh,
have, you can use as a focus for your magic. So basically, they do magic by getting drunk or getting high on drugs, stuff like that. Which is why Jimi Hendrix was one of them.
nice. Good bacchanal. Hey there, Raisin.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm seeing here. Let's see, but basic concept of werewolves, cosmology. Oh, there's also a faction there called the Neferandi, which look like they're trying to bring around a doomsday cult.
The Vandy. Yeah, I think they're Effective Fallen Mages. Yeah, they're another one of the villain groups.
There's a lot of links and names that they assume that you know. Wither slapping.
Yeah, that's why they're links. So that if you don't know them, you can go and find out. Like, I've never heard of this thing.
A reincarnated avatars of dead Neferandi.
Nefandi.
Uh, living argument against free will. As unawakened, they are sociopaths and monsters, unusual vicious bully, child who tortures pets, source of all those missing young girls. Wake, their fun really begins. Okay. Um.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous as fuck.
Yeah. This is. It's vague, but like the lore seems pretty vague and not too like rigid, but it seems instead it's been filled up with a lot of terminology and like the
Hmm.
high umbras, the low umbras. What the fuck's a gauntlet?
Yeah, the Umbras are I would say actually it says it right there with werewolf. That's where it overlaps with werewolf somewhat because the Umbra is like an astral plane type of concept that the some werewolves interact with.
Hmm.
So of course there's some overlap with mage there.
High, mid, and low umbras.
Mm.
There's Yin World, Shadowlands. Okay, so this is basically the cosmology, same at D&D, just
Similar,
um,
they draw from similar inspirations for sure.
mm.
Oh, Raisin asks, have we ever played Dread or Paranoia? I'm not familiar with Dread. I have played Paranoia. That is a very silly game. That is a game where you have to pretend you don't see various objects if they're not a color that you're allowed to see because of security clearances. Also, a game where you're given 5 clones of yourself at the beginning of the game because you're going to die frequently.
Have not awakened. Special concern. Cults. It's cult of ecstasy.
Also, a very suggestive picture of a flower.
If you're gonna have a flower as your logo and you're a cult of some sort of pleasure, you might as well make it look as.
Also, I like how underneath their tools and practices, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Raisin, by the way, did you know there is a Paranoia computer game now? I don't think it went over super well, but It's basically like an XCOM type gameplay.
Come
Yeah, speaking
on.
of
There's Jim
uh
Morrison.
there you go, Aleister Crowley. Actually, I'm surprised that he's Aleister Crowley is an ecstatic. Um,
Yeah, he would have.
I would have expected him to be Order of Hermes or something like that, which is basically you, you know what like wizards and Dungeons and Dragons where they have like their spell books and their magic formulas and stuff. That's what the Order of Hermes is.
Hmm.
So they of course have figures such as Merlin and whatnot.
Paradox, Real or Force, Fragile. Jesus Christ. Um,
But yeah, as far as
this
the
how
hmm?
many it's been doing it since the 90s. How many editions are there in now? Like how many
I think
versions is
there's
there?
only four. There's been like large gaps between. Also, they don't even number them properly. Like I think the current edition is called 20th anniversary edition or something. And I think it's the fourth one. Maybe it says in here somewhere. But have you taken your happy pills, citizen? We happy few.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't
yeah.
played
Speaking of
that.
the like magical tools and foci they use, as well as technomancers. Uh, so I mentioned earlier the correspondence magic about distance and space and stuff, right?
There
Location
it is,
magic.
by the way.
There you go. Yeah.
Rulebook, second revised 20th, and Laws of
I don't
Ascension.
click on second edition maybe. I think that might be what I have. I've got the one that looks like this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you have it.
I've got mine is second edition. Um, anyway, one of the traditions that's one of the technomancers, not technocrats. That's different. But just they do magic through technology are the people who specialize in the correspondence. They call themselves the virtual adepts, and basically they're hackers and programmers. They do their spells by sitting down and like writing lines of code and reprogramming reality. And because of their magic is the correspondence location magic, that allows them to be very good at enacting their magic at distances. So they don't really need to be somewhere. They can just be like, the team goes somewhere while the virtual adept stays at home on their computer and watches them on a video feed and then channels their magic through the security cameras or the GoPro or whatever.
Oh, okay. That's clever.
Yeah. So they got a lot of words here. Some of these are magical spheres and some of them are other things. I'm not sure why this is in a circle like this.
Well, it's showing that there's a sort of Ouroboros where one thing
Yeah.
leads
Oh, I
eventually
see
into
what it is.
another.
The words that are associated with the symbols, those are the magical spheres, and then the words that are just in the arrows pointing in between the symbols are just, I guess, the description of the Ouroboros is a concept. But yeah,
Yeah,
these ones with the
conception,
symbols, these are all the
focus,
spheres.
form. So these would be like realms of magic, basically.
In a way, yeah. And we were talking about the vampires too, of course. So that's one interesting. Like we've got life magic, and we also have matter magic. And because vampires aren't alive anymore, life magic doesn't work on them. You have to use matter
Oh.
if you're going to
Um,
be directly affecting a vampire's body with your magic effects.
would that mean that, I don't know, decay, would that work on a vampire's body?
Well, remember, decay is the arrows between symbols. That's not one of the magical
Oh, okay.
spheres.
I guess
But
time?
entropy, well, time would work in a way. But you could use entropy to attack people because entropy is a combination of random chance, but also just like the decay of things over time. You know, the way everything breaks down or falls apart with enough time can fall into
Hmm.
entropy. So you can use entropy to like make somebody's body like fall apart more rapidly, I guess. But usually it's used more for like affecting random chance of things. Like I know they have a thing where As long as you introduce some level of random element to something, you can then affect either maximize the randomness of it or choose what the outcome will be. Like you could just like cut a deck in half and then put it back together, and the magic can say like, okay, that's a fully shuffled deck now, even though you didn't shuffle it at all really.
All right.
And you can
Yeah,
also you could also dictate what the next card will be
kind of like
if you want to affect
Schrodinger's
what.
deck, basically.
Sort of, sort of. Except you're guaranteeing what the outcome will be.
Hmm.
So you could cheat at cards that way or do any kind of different things.
I have seen so much fantasy and D&D and Warhammer over the years that 90% of these symbols I've seen elsewhere in like Warhammer
Yeah,
Fantasy and fucking like, wait a minute, is that
absolutely.
just yeah, that's just a Necron logo altered.
Basically.
Um,
Or it's the other way around, most likely.
oh yeah,
They're probably they probably got this from like
that's the
real.
Tau.
Most of these probably come from real life magical belief systems or
Sure.
mythological ideas, and
Hmm.
then and
Well,
then
that's just an Ankh.
Games Workshop and then Games Workshop took them and altered them slightly for Warhammer stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Like the Necron logo is just kind of like a heavily altered Ankh, for example, which of
Yeah,
course also
which
Ultima did.
which is also fitting because the Necrons are very Egyptian inspired,
Mm. Um,
at least in their visuals anyway.
yeah, these are just the
They're basically
this
pyramids and mummies and stuff,
mm,
scarabs,
the different
alchemical symbols.
astrological stuff.
Yeah,
Um, all right, well, I have a feeling that we could spend hours as you try to break down the lore for this, but we don't have really hours, and also I
oh,
don't think
honestly,
that is.
more accurately, we could spend hours trying to break down the lore with me and me saying I'm not sure about that information. I don't know. You'd be trying to go deeper than I know, but then, or we could just like Wikipedia deep dive it together. But yeah, one could go very deep into this. But just the general idea is that I really like just the flexibility of the magic system and how you can make stuff up. One thing I'll say is that you can combine multiple spheres together into one effect, and sometimes you'd have to like high levels of life, for example. You could just create new life out of nothing. You could be like, I made this homunculus, or like I made this living whatever, but it wouldn't have a mind of its own unless you also combined mind magic into it to create a mind for it. And then you'd have to use prime magic to imbue it with permanence if you didn't want the thing to just be temporary. Prime magic being meta magic, basically the magic of magic.
So, what um, like to make a basically to make Frankenstein's monster, what would you have to do?
I'd say that would be matter because he was made of corpses, but you'd have to have high level of matter and prime in mind for that. Um, Maybe a bit of forces just because of the method he used to jumpstart it with lightning. If you wanted to supply your own lightning rather than waiting for a storm. But yeah, something along those lines. It would take quite a lot. You'd have to be a very accomplished mage to have high enough levels of all of these things at once. It'd be like playing a vampire character who's got like three different disciplines that are all at five.
Not
That is
impossible, but
some
really
end,
rare.
not impossible, but that's some end game stuff. Newbie characters aren't doing that. And you can just be
Um,
silly with it too. I played a game with a friend once who did a very silly thing. Who could just combine like small levels of stuff into silly little effects he would do. He played a character who he must have been Cult of Ecstasy because his character was just an absolute drunkard and stoner. Um, but he had like little things like he had one magic effect where whenever he had to go somewhere, his character would just like hop on his bike and drive. And he wouldn't even pay attention to which direction he was going. He would just hop on his bike and go. And every single time, it would happen to be the correct way. because he had a magic effect of 1 point of correspondence and 1 point of entropy, I think, that guaranteed that the random, whatever direction he randomly chose was the right one, because he would just sense it instinctively. Just silly little things like that. That's not even useful. That's just role playing flavor.
So when the game is being put together, what's the typical like players, like 3, 5 people all playing, or is there limits?
I would say it's the same as any other game, which I would say between 3 and 5 is ideal. I feel like more than that is too much. I've been in role playing games that had like 10 players in them, and you spend half the night sitting there doing nothing because the DM has to divide their attention across 10 people. It's too many.
Yeah.
I say 3 to 5 is pretty much the ideal number for most games, for sure.
Um, all right. Well, we can't really linger on too much if we want to get through it all.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you really want to talk about this before
Um,
we move
I
on
think
to the
that covers
next?
the general idea. One other quick, brief mention I will say is the other technomancers are the matter magic people. Their tradition was originally called the Sons of Ether until they decided to stop being so sexist about it, and then I think they changed it to Children of Ether.
Ah.
But they are basically super science mad scientist mages. Think like your traditional old like pulp sci-fi, like two-fisted pulp sci-fi, like Buck Rogers, or they make instead of throwing fireballs at people, they make a ray gun that then shoots a fireball. They're
All
not
right.
doing magic. They're just their focus is they have to invent something, and then their invention does the thing. You know, so they're kind of fun that way. That's all. You get to have the fun of coming up with inventions to do your magic effects, and they just literally view magic as a higher level of science beyond what the regular people know about. It's like when we discovered quantum physics, but like quantum physics plus plus.
Hmm.
Quantum physics is damn near magic already.
It basically is. At a certain point, even the smartest people in quantum physics just have to put their hands up and go, it's just over there somewhere."
Yeah, seriously,
We'll deal with that
madness.
later in 300 years when someone can do it for us and the rest of us will all be dead.
Pretty much. Yeah.
All right. So we're moving on now to another White Wolf product, Scion.
Yeah. I don't remember where my book is for this one, but it's around here somewhere. Is that it? No. Anyway, this one is also made by White Wolf, so it uses the same or similar stats and game mechanics. Have you ever actually played the tabletop of Vampire or anything like that, by the way?
No, I've only ever played one tabletop my entire life, and I was a
Okay.
guest in Elf King's
All right.
D&D campaign.
So just a brief description because it's not super important, but just for those who are curious. So when you're playing your Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines and you've got that character sheet that you're buying more stats on, right? Everything is a rating of like 1 to 5 dots of something or other.
Yeah,
The way it wor-
C.
the way it works in the tabletop game is each dot represents a D10 that you roll whenever you're rolling that thing. So say for example you're shooting somebody with a gun. I believe that's perception plus firearms is the two stats you're using for that one. It's usually an attribute plus a skill, right?
Mm.
So you take however many dots you have in perception and however many dots you have in firearms, you add those dots together, and then you roll that many d10s. And every d10 that comes up with a 7 or above is considered to be a success. And you see how many successes you get, and then that tells you how well you did. In this case, it would be you're rolling against whatever the defender's dodge is, and then whoever has more successes, you hit or miss with the attack. Maybe you get bonus damage if you hit really precisely or something. And Scion does the same sort of thing, but it's not part of World of Darkness. It's its own totally separate. It's still modern day Earth, but it's totally separate stories. There's no Vampire the Masquerade or Mage of the Ascension happening alongside Scions. And the main reason for that is both because it's trying to focus on its own story exclusively, but also because the power levels wouldn't work. The reason the other guys can all interact with each other is because the mages and the vampires and the werewolves, to some extent, have been designed to be relatively power balanced with each other. Not completely. Like, a typical werewolf who gets into a battle with a typical vampire will probably rip that vampire in half. But it just depends on the situation. Like they've all got their things they're better at. But overall, they're relatively like a high level Brujah could probably take a werewolf because they've got all the potence and stuff. But Scions, as they progress higher level, just outclass the other ones so completely that it would be ridiculous. Because the reason being is what Scions are. Now, are you familiar with what the word means in English? Scion.
It's a child, isn't it?
A child, but with usually it's usually used in reference to like nobility, because
Yeah,
like
so
the scion of a noble house would be not just their child, but also the one that it stands to inherit the estate and it's the inheritor as well as like they're gonna inherit the wealth and power of the noble house when they come of age, kind of thing.
yeah,
So the idea with Scion is it's based around mythology. Uh, the idea being that the Norse mythology of Ragnarok is looming over the horizon in the next few decades. The the trapped Greek titans are poised to potentially break free soon, and it's going to start kick off Ragnarok. And so the gods have decided we need to prepare for this. We've foreseen it with enough time that we can do something about this, but we need more. Like, there's not enough of us to stop this. We're not strong enough to stop this. We need more gods. So they go out and they Zeus up the world, essentially. They go out and they start banging mortals, making more
wild
kids.
uh, ball spawn basically.
They basically ball spawn the world, yes, except for with intentions of good instead of evil. So the Scion player characters are those children. Uh, Anybody who's watched the Percy Jackson movie, I believe,
I was just
is
thinking
similar
that.
idea. Because I haven't seen it, but from what I understand, Percy Jackson is the son of Poseidon, right?
I believe so. I only seen bits and pieces of it, and I
I,
never read the books. I know they're big
I don't
fans.
I don't know about his friend. Yeah, I've never read it or watched it, but I've heard a little bit about it. I don't know what the other characters are, if anything. But I think Percy himself is supposed to be the son of Poseidon. And so this game is basically that on a wider scale. The characters are left alone to grow up as mortals, be raised by their mortal parents. Uh, it's possible their parents don't even know. Like, let's say, like for example, I played a character for a while who was a scion of Thor. Thor was my character's father. Um, I think in a lot of cases, necessarily, like my character's mother might not have even known that biker dude she had a one night stand with 20 years ago was Thor. He could have just been in an immortal disguise or something.
Mm.
But so you're left to be raised by your mortal parent or parents, if it was an infidelity thing, um, until you come of age and you in some way prove or display to your godly parent that you are ready to inherit your divine power. And then you're given the game calls it a visitation. Basically, either your godly parent or an agent sent by them shows up, reveals to your character who you really are, and then your powers wake up, and you're off to adventure and start fighting out against Titan spawn and Titan cults and whatever other stuff's going on. So you choose as are listed on the screen right now. Like maybe people wouldn't recognize most of these names that you see here right now, but these are the five basic. Well, actually, no, they list six.
All right. Before you go on
Okay,
any
it is
further,
six. I was remembering wrong. Yeah. Okay.
we're going to go through each one of these, and let's see how good your memory or your interest in history and mythology and all
Hmm.
that is. Can you straight
Sure.
away name any of these without me having to go into them? Yeah, like, do
When
you
you
know
say name,
which
do you
ones?
mean?
Guess
Oh,
what
yeah.
society they're from.
I know what they are, but that's partly because I've played this
All right,
before.
that's
But
fair.
I could have told you at least a couple of them before then as well. But better question, because I know them already, do you know them?
All right, the Aesir are the Norse.
Yes.
And because this is in Greek, it's obvious that's the Greek pantheon.
Yep.
Probably toss in a little
Yep.
bit of Roman going on. The Aslanti, is that basically either a fusion of, it would be like Aztec shit, right?
Yeah, that's the Aztec pantheon.
I'm guessing with a name like Anamaskumi, that's kind of like Japanese
Hmm.
ish.
That's that's the Japanese pantheon.
Uh, Sajet would be like Indian.
Egyptian.
Oh shit.
Good,
And
reasonable guess though.
Loa.
The Loa is interesting because in real life mythology they're not really considered to be gods or a pantheon necessarily, but for the purposes of the Scion game they decided to make them into one. Like they're they're framing it as like they're the lowest spirits have ascended to the point that they are now essentially fledgling gods.
Okay.
And some of the other more established pantheons take some umbrage with that to some degree, but they're all in a situation where everybody's got to work together, you know?
No.
The interesting thing with the
So
Loa is they have to make their scions differently. They can't, because the Loa can't just manifest in the world as people, right? Part of their thing with their Loa is they are disembodied spirits. So if they want to appear in the world, they have to possess somebody and then have that person act on their behalf.
okay.
So they make scions by possessing a mortal and then having sex at that point, and their essence gets passed through when they do that. So you could have just like a regular couple, married couple, have a kid, and it turns out it's a godchild because one of them was possessed by a Loa when it happened.
Okay. Um. So
We actually had a scion of Baron Samedi in our campaign.
Greek
He was a
pantheon.
travel agent because Baron Samedi is the Loa equivalent of a psychopomp. In other words, a messenger god slash um, like how I can't think of another term for it, but like the god responsible for helping dead spirits reach the death realm.
Like a Chiron or Charon
Charon, yeah,
Charon, or
yeah,
basically
Charon's
just
slash.
Grim Reaper.
I think that yeah, although also like Hermes because he's the messenger god. Like it's not always about ferrying the dead necessarily.
No,
But for Baron Samedi, it's more about ferrying the dead than being a messenger,
he's
for
an
sure.
interim god. Or hell,
Yeah,
that one from LucasArts, Grim Fandango.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like him. Um, but yeah, so our in our campaign, we had a scion of Baron Samedi who was a travel agent because you gotta lean into your theme a little bit, even if your character doesn't know that they're the child of a god, they're gonna have tendencies towards similar actions, right?
Mm.
So that person has just had the psychopomp in his blood. Um, and my character, I decided I wanted to play a Scion of Thor, but I thought like, okay, what would a modern day Thor child be like? It was like, all right, how about like a badass biker warrior type character, right?
Yeah.
But then I thought that's still maybe a little on the nose. That's still a little bit too much. This is exactly what Thor would be like today. So I thought I'd throw a twist in. Like, all right, well, how about a badass biker warrior biker chick? So I
Oh.
went like Lady Thor version with it, kind of thing. And that was a very fun character, especially because the way the stats worked out, I was essentially able to make myself pretty much immune to everything throughout the campaign. Like just be my defenses, both my strength and defenses were so high that nothing could hurt me. So I ended up being like the team tank. I was essentially playing like the anti-bully type of trope, where it's like my character is here to shut down bullies and evil people and protect the party. But I protect the party not by being like the knight with a sword and shield, but by being the person who's bullying the bullies. So I sort of like quote unquote tanked or protected by being the one that would jump into the combat first, and I would do it with reckless abandon because it was almost impossible for them to hurt me at all.
There's
So
a
I would
char-
just do crazy shit.
there's a character in The Expanse that fills that role, as he says, I'm a bad person. Whenever he talks to people he doesn't like, he goes, I'm a bad person too, but I found something to care about, so you better watch it, or else I'll be a bad person to you. You
Yeah,
know? Yeah. Dude.
I like
Uh,
it.
yeah. Oh, God,
But
I
yeah,
love The
my character
Expanse.
wasn't a bad person in general. She was just like, I am very angry at the bad people, and I will fuck their shit up. But I have a heart of gold towards other people.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I don't tank by having a shield. I tank by just getting up in your face, and you have to deal with me first because I'm your problem.
So I'm looking
And I
at
would do
all
sh-
these
mm-hmm,
different. I'm looking at all these different
mm-hmm.
pantheons, and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
is this it, or is there like what about like the
they added
Babylonian pantheons, or like
they added more later, but these six are the ones that are in the rule book by like the main rule book by default.
okay,
It's like those vampire clans, you know, like when you played Bloodlines. Remember, you had I think it was like 8 or 9 clans that you could choose from, but then you're aware of there being a bunch of other clans that exist that weren't listed there. It's like that. I don't think they added. I don't think they put the Babylons in specifically, but they put in like the Chinese and the Indians. Um, and there was one book. I think this one was unofficial. It was made by a fan, but somebody created one that was like indigenous peoples, North American indigenous great
ooh,
spirits as a pantheon. And I actually played a character who was a scion of one of those, who was the coyote trickster spirit.
oh, that's cool.
So I played like a trickster character. And one thing they do is in the listing of each god, they give you, I don't know if it's on here, maybe it is, but it was in the books, like alternate names, because you know how the gods have like 5 to 10 different names for themselves, right?
Yeah.
For different groups. Uh, the ones they listed for the Great Spirit Coyote were pretty funny because they went into all sorts of different trickster characters, right? A couple of which being Brer Rabbit from the children's books,
All right.
and another one they listed was just said Bugs. So I was literally a scion of Bugs Bunny.
Uh, I like that, and it does lead into my next obvious one. What about the Abrahamic faiths, the monotheistic faiths, like Jesus, Muhammad, so on?
uh, there's a pre-made adventure that actually treats them as villains. They equate they basically equate Yahweh as like the Abrahamic manifestation of the sun god. So basically, not necessarily Amun Ra, but I think there was like a Titan equivalent or something like more primeval than Amun Ra.
Mm.
I'm forgetting the name. It was a similar name,
Hundi.
Amat, Amat or something like that. And also we ended up facing off against, at least briefly, against the Four Horsemen. We actually had a side adventure where a town had been destroyed and was overrun by zombie apocalypse that had been caused by, I think, pestilence. And that was actually a kind of funny scene in a way because we went over to deal with that, and there were three of us there that day. Myself, a scion of Persephone or Persephone, and a scion of Tyr. So me and the Scion of Tyr were like the badass warrior archetypes, whereas the Scion of Persephone was playing more of a mage character, specializing in abilities relating to life and
There's the
death,
Irish.
of course.
Here are the Irish gods, which are the
Hmm.
Titans in this version. Titans of Earth.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this stuff here works.
Is a
I
towering
haven't seen
mountain.
these.
Uh,
Um, these might be the
bonus.
baddies.
Yeah, I'm on the Titan page.
Okay, yeah. Um, so anyway, she was playing more of a druid mage type, so she wasn't really much of a fighter. But we're going in there, and me and the other scion of Tyr, we're slaughtering the zombies. But then we run into Pestilence himself, and he's basically just doing this as an experiment. And he uses this ability on us called, I think it's lunacy or something like that, where he just like inflict madness on people, which is how the
Mm.
zombie outbreak started. The zombies weren't actually undead; they were just regular humans who had been driven to uh, to madness in the form of insatiable hunger. Like they had to eat as much as possible immediately, and that meant each other. But the difference thing being, some of these powers are have different effects based on whether they're used on, like they're more devastating when used on mortals, because people who have like a legendary status, in other words, scions and similar things, creatures of legend, etc., the effect will be temporary on them, whereas it's permanent on humans. So those guys are essentially just zombies forever until they're put down or starved to death. Whereas we could shake it off. But he used the same thing on us. And so we had this choice of like, okay, for the next, I think we were told it was going to last an hour or something like that. We're going to have this insatiable zombie hunger for the next hour. But we get to take one action before it sets in. What do you do with that? So we were given the option of, and we had to spend a point of willpower to do even that one action, right? But the game has a thing where we were allowed to, you could take your willpower stat and you could choose to burn one point of your stat off permanently in order to just completely resist this effect.
What the fuck? Hold
And
on.
the
The
Scion of
al-
Tyr chose to do that. Oh yeah, they did a weird thing in this where there's a side book where they did like a World War II centric story, and they had national pantheons. So you could be a scion of Baba Yaga, for example,
Britannia, John
or
Bull, Robin Hood.
yeah, you could be a scion of Britannia itself. You could be a scion of um, you could be a scion of Uncle Sam. The
The
citizen that you've got
citizen.
highlighted, that one is interesting because normally the way you increase in power, like you have a stat called your legend rating, which determines how powerful of a scion you are overall. It's a rough equivalent of how vampires have a generation stat.
Mm.
So in theirs, they have a legend stat, and the way your legend stat grows is you have to actually build a legend around yourself. So you have to be out there being a scion of the gods boldly and openly and attracting worshippers and doing big legendary acts, right? With the citizen, it's the opposite because the citizen's thing, and this is very Soviet, of course, which is why it was in the Soviet category. what were the World War II era Soviets all about? Communism, being a cog in the machine, right?
Mm.
Being a faceless member of the great machine. So the citizen is the embodiment of that, where you don't want to stand out and be legendary. Instead, you want to melt into the collective and help the team without taking any glory for yourself.
So you just become a
So the
massive
citizen could be
buff.
anybody. Yeah. So the example character they had for him was just like, instead of having a name, he was just like sniper number 417 or something like that. It's like, oh, somebody sniped Hitler. Yay, great. Go team. Who was it? I don't know. Didn't see him.
It's kind of weird that they even have one for Zoroastrianism. Yazda, the Persian gods.
That's pretty
Jesus
cool.
Christ. Yeah.
That's a cool idea. Um,
Um.
the example character they did for the Norse pantheon was another Scion of Thor character, but with his guy concentrated on firearms rather than melee strength, and he had a magical relic that was a special revolver that he would channel his thunder magic through, and his revolver, the hammer that he pulled back, was made from a chip of Mjolnir.
Ah. That's clever. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
was pretty cool because at least at the beginning of the game, you have to have a magical relic that you channel your divine powers through until you grow strong enough that you don't need it anymore.
Mm. Via a
And
birthright.
they and instead of like
Shift.
spheres of magic uh, or vampire disciplines, they have something they call purviews, which is essentially when you take a look at what gods are the god of, what their purview is, right? So, for example, my character dabbled in a few, but mostly I was like thunder, justice, and earth were my purviews that I took points in.
According to their virtues. Yeah, I was looking at.
Or
I
at least
was
my main
looking
ones.
at purviews there. There they are. But the I don't know. It seems very clever, and if you're going to be breaking out the idea of nations, you could very easily get really wild, like fandoms
Oh,
for a
oh my
homebrew.
God, Hollow Cure, the Pantheon, Hollow Life. Oh my God, that there would be multiple VTuber pantheons in a case like that, right?
Um,
Oh my
uh,
God.
I was thinking more like Star Trek versus Star Wars in a homebrew. You
Oh,
know,
that
like
too.
yeah.
Absolutely that too. By the way, for anybody who's interested in this idea of having like a mythology-based role-playing game, I know a couple guys that are making their own from scratch. People who are actually huge fans of Scion, and I know them because of Scion. They actually made their own set of homebrew rules that people could download and use their tweaks and changes to the rules. Uh, to the point they decided to just break off and make their entire own game. So look up uh, the Hero's Journey RPG is what they're making. It looks like it's very interesting. They
You
do
got a link?
two streams on. I will find one. They do two streams a week of play testing their thing. Hold on.
Sand, Ragnarok, Companion, Yazda, The Seeds of Tomorrow,
Is
Wolfham,
it
Liberty Road, Shadows Yet Come.
here? You go. Um, Bam.
Okay, there it is. Okay,
So
Hero's
this is
Journey.
basically the same thing as Scion. I don't know if they're going with the Titans and Ragnarok backstory to it or not. Uh, and it's more flexible as far as origins. You don't have to be the child of a god. You can be like the chosen empowered champion of a god, or you can be like a minotaur or a satyr or something, like a
Ah,
legendary creature of some sort.
Where's the
but it's
why
along
did the
similar
last
ideas.
update end in 2002? 2022.
Yeah, they've been they've been buried in playtesting for a while, so I don't know that they've had anything to post. And just to be specific, the game's not finished yet, so it's not available to buy just yet. But it could be an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
On
They're big
2024.
mythology nerds.
There we go. Oh
They're
dear.
definitely still playtesting it. They're just not posting on here a lot, I think.
They shut down your
Hold on, let me just.
website with all the angry forum posts on it. Still the same old story. Never coming out. Never want to contribute. Lost their money. Oh no. This was 2 years ago.
I don't think they're communicating progress well. I promise they are still working on it. Actually, let me find their Twitch channel so you can see their playtests if you want.
I wonder why they do that to themselves. That's shooting themselves in the foot for this sort of startup sort of thing. You need to keep people informed. Look what happened to Star Citizen.
Yeah, that is a bit of a problem in itself there. But hold on.
Not to throw shade, they clearly put effort into it. And if they're still doing it hell, after all these years,
I'm just grabbing
um,
my followed channels list here.
well, we'll have a look at this and then we'll move on from Scion to the last one of the evening after we look at this channel for a bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely enjoy Scion from the mythology dork standpoint, and it's just fun to play all these sorts of characters and you meet the gods. Like at one point, when my character reached demigod status, I got a new custom weapon made for me by Hephaestus.
Cool.
Hephaestus and Sindri working together, in fact. And if anybody doesn't know the name Sindri, that's the dwarf who made Mjolnir. Okay, here we go. One second. Here is their Twitch channel.
Okay.
You could watch them play the game that they're working on making.
Ah,
They're still pretty active at that. Good folks too, which is why I'm pimping their thing. They're good friends. Actually, funny story. At one point, let me get my screens back open properly. At one point, they were doing like a write-in show. Like, if you have questions about how to handle situations or just questions about Scion, email us and we'll do like a video answering your questions. You know, one of those Ask Me Anything videos.
hmm.
Yes, this is similar. The guy in the upper left is the guy GMing, and the one in the lower right is his wife. They're the two that are making this game. Anyway, um, so they did like sort of Ask Me Anything advice show for a bit, and at one point I was watching that and I was listening to one of the questions that got written in. And I was like, wait a minute, this situation that this GM is asking for advice on sounds incredibly familiar. I did this. This is my GM asking for advice on how to handle what I did. So I wrote to them and I was like, hey, that was me. It was funny.
All right.
Because in one of the pre-made adventures, you end up in Las Vegas dealing with a cult. And they summon this monster. Like, have you been to Vegas, by the way?
No, I never got that far west.
So there, I don't know if they still have it now, but there was this one casino that was like at the top of a big tower, and they were famous for having a roller coaster on the top of their casino, on the roof of the casino, like 50 stories up or something. I forget what the
Check.
casino was called. But in our Scion campaign, and this is a pre-made adventure, so White Wolf themselves wrote this quest. The the cult manages to
Oh.
summon a giant monster snake. The Stratosphere, that's what it was called.
Okay.
And the monster snake took this form of being like half snake, half like the roller coaster turned into the snake halfway.
Oh.
and we were fighting it on this roof. But its defenses were just a little bit too strong for us. We couldn't quite manage to do any damage to it, despite having maxed out strength stats for our level. So what I ended up doing is taking out the support. And to be specific, we were fighting it at like 4 a.m. So while Vegas is a hopping crazy party town, it's still 4 a.m. There's gonna be less people around. I ended up taking out the support structures because part of the roller coaster went over the edge of the roof a little bit. That was part of the thrill. So I took out some of the support structures and made sure that when it went across that part, it would fall off and like drop like 50 stories into the street, so that we can maybe get some damage on him that way. And so my gem's like, oh my god, what the fuck did I do? This guy just dropped the monster in the middle of the street. But I think he's got too much experience playing World of Darkness games, or like he's too used to like the masquerade from Vampire. You know, he's too used to the idea that players are supposed to be hiding the existence of magic from the world. Where this in this game, you're supposed to be throwing down and showing the world how awesome you are, which is what I just did. But he was just like, "Oh no, how do I handle this? The masquerade that doesn't exist just got shattered wide." So as a
um,
result, we ended up getting high level eventually without having worshippers. Basically, we were supposed to have worshippers by then.
all right. Well then,
But
let's
it was
move
just funny to see that. Yeah,
let's move on to
I, excellent game, very fun idea.
hmm.
Big thumbs up.
All right. Last one is Earth Dawn.
Yeah, we could probably even do a whole other one on this, but absolutely my favorite tabletop RPG. Uh, it's basically a high fantasy adventure. It fills the same niche as Dungeons and Dragons. Product was not found. Oh, maybe they changed the link broke or something. That's weird.
Hmm.
I should
Um,
ask him about this actually, because fun fact, I've got a friend who works for Faza, who's actually I believe she's become the head of Earth Dawn actually. She wasn't at the time that I met her, but she is now. There's Faza Games is a pretty small company right now, by the way. They're not the monolith they used to be, and they don't have all of their games that they used to have anymore, such as Shadowrun is now owned by somebody else.
oh, they made Shadowrun.
FASA made Shadowrun originally, but they ended up selling it to somebody else.
All right, let's have a
But
look.
that's actually one of the things that makes Earth Dawn so interesting is they created it to be linked to Shadowrun. So Earth
Battletech.
Dawn and Shadowrun are the same story, but thousands of years apart from each other.
Oh, they've lost. Yeah, I was gonna say they've lost the right. They would not be low on money if they still had the rights to BattleTech.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
have you played? Do you know much stuff about Shadowrun, by the way?
I actually have both of them on my GOG for years, and I've never touched them.
But not the tabletop one either.
No, I know the gist of it, where they've just basically
Okay.
put the fantasy setting in a cyberpunk setting.
Basically, I'll give you the general gist of it just because it relates to Earth Dawn as well. Uh, the story in Shadowrun is that the world has an inherent level of magic in it that changes over time. Think of like a big sine wave, that one that just like goes predictably up and down, right?
Mm.
And that's how much magic there is in the given world. And in the current world that you and I live in, the real world, we're at the bottom. The magic's gone to sleep. There's no magic. But with in Shadowrun, the idea is that as we move a little bit into the future, and in this case specifically, it's like 2038 or something like that, is when the magic starts to reappear in the world, starts to reawaken a bit. And so now you've got essentially cyberpunk setting, but also with some magic in it. So you've got hellhounds, you've got spirits, you've got mages. We'll take that idea and rewind backwards along that sine wave with the level
It
of
says here
magic.
it's a prequel to Shadowrun.
Yes. So basically, it's like the mirror opposite. Instead of being Shadowrun where you're at the bottom of magic but it's starting to come back, you're instead at the previous peak of magic where it's just starting to come down.
Mm.
And but this magic level going up and down takes an extremely long time. And in fact, it's one of those Shadowrun games on GOG that you're talking about, the computer game, that gave me a more specific number. Not a very specific number, but a bit of a number. Because there's an NPC you talk to in that game that talks about the previous height of magic. And he's essentially talking about Earthdawn without saying Earthdawn. But it's roughly 6 to 7,000 years ago that it takes for the one peak to go down to a valley. So Earthdawn is Earth, roughly 4 to 5,000 BC,
All right.
before any of the countries we know of existed. And it's kind of funny because there's a map of the particular area you default play in, which is
Bar
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 save,
save.
exactly. It's called bar save. It's essentially uh, a state or of a dwarven kingdom. And they show you this map of the dwarven kingdom, but actually go back a step to that second one, the World Anvil one. You see that red splotch on there? This is a pretty rough map, but that is, yeah. Okay, scroll it down a bit. See if you can find that red area. Okay, it's to the west a little bit. Okay, see the Scarlet Sea there, and the Death Sea, right?
Mm.
They're red because those are seas of lava.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, stay on this one here for a second. So we have this map, and we're told that this is Earth, but they don't tell us what this equates to. But somebody eventually figured it out. They found a real world map where the geography lines up properly. And it turns out that in modern day, the Scarlet Sea, obviously it's no longer made of lava, but it is a real sea. It is the Black Sea. This is the southern half of Ukraine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Black Sea. There's the Caspian Sea.
Yeah, yeah, yep. And you can't see it from this particular version of the map, but just to the west of this is the Aegean Sea.
That's right. That's the Balkans. This would be Romania. Bulgaria would be
Yeah.
further on down.
So you're living in a dwarven kingdom, basically ancient proto-Ukrainian dwarves.
Hmm.
And that's another thing that's interesting about it because usually in games like D&D, you'll have a language called Common, which is typically like the human language.
Hmm.
The language that's the common trade, and it's called Common because it's the common trade language because it's the language merchants will conduct trade in the language that's whatever the majority demographic is, right? Well, this is a dwarven kingdom. Guess what the majority demographic is here? So the common trade language that every character speaks automatically is dwarven.
Kind of like oh, what's the name of this? Actually, that's happened in a few settings. Dragon Age, before they retconned it, the language was Dwarven, and so was
Mhm.
Pathfinder, I do believe. A lot of human the sort of default Western society is speaks Dwarven.
Yeah. Also, a fun detail they have in here that I learned from talking to people at FAST after I made some friends with them is the legend of Atlantis is tied up in the Earthdawn story to a degree as well. One of the enemy groups they have is there is a nation of super powerful mages that have done like tons of magic research. They're an island nation with powerful mages, and they occasionally come in and do like slave kidnapping runs because they're very, very bad people, very evil government, and they're called Thera. Now, if anybody here is a big history slash geography nerd, Thera is a real name from Greek history. It's one of the Greek islands. Although they changed their name at one point. I don't remember how long ago. I think they're called Santorini now.
Yeah, I know Santorini. I know people who visited it.
But yeah, Santorini is an island that used to have a. I don't know if the volcano is still there or if it sank when it erupted, but it like half of the island sank with with an absolutely catastrophic volcanic eruption
Yeah,
at one point.
base
And
created a little like lagoon.
back then the island, yeah, and it's called Santorini now, but it used to be called Thera. A lot of people believe that that catastrophic volcanic eruption that sank half the island is the real world event that inspired the story of Atlantis.
Yep.
And so that's the island of Atlantis, or at least the island that the story is based on. And so in this game we have this island nation of evil wizards called Thera, based on this real place, and they're said to come from the southwest of Barsave, and that's where the Aegean Sea would be compared to Ukraine. So, and what's the legend of Atlantis? Poseidon punished them for overstepping their bounds and with researches of magic and arrogance, right?
Hmm.
Which perfectly fits with the nation of Thera as portrayed in Earth Dawn.
All right. So we have the
So
setting.
the 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 Atlantis setting will happen. The Atlantis sinking event is in the future from Earth Dawn. But yeah, we have the setting.
Now, apparently there are these things
Also,
called
there's
horrors.
horrors. Yes, there's also a major Lovecraftian eldritch horror element to the story, and also a little bit of Fallout in a way. Think Magic Fallout,
Mm.
as in Fallout, Pip Boys, etc. Vault Tech.
Yeah.
So one of the problems with the high level of magic in the world is some of the diviners and magic researchers before the peak was hit, but shortly before the peak of magic was hit, they realized that the higher the magic level in the world goes, the thinner the barrier between worlds comes, and like the more the closer the astral plane comes to overlapping with reality. And they figured out that there are these creatures from beyond the astral plane, from other dimensions, that are very powerful and very hungry, and they thrive on feeding on people's pain and misery. So Lovecraftian horrors slash warp spawn bullshit.
Mm.
You know, the warp is coming to eat Earth, basically. When we reach the peak of magic, the barriers between worlds are going to be thin enough that they can come in and storm Earth and destroy us all, either physically or mentally or both. So precautions had to be taken to survive this. And they eventually came down to building something called cares, which are essentially medieval vaults. They're big underground cities that will be protected by massive doors and magical enchantments supplied by Thera at a cost, as you've just found there. Yeah, and this period of time where they were hiding was called the Scourge. And this is where it gets very Fallout.
From
So
the
they spent
bargain.
multiple generations and centuries hiding from the world. 400 years, yep. Before
I see it
eventually,
coming out into the world, and that's the
yeah,
start of it.
yeah, they realized that when the level of magic started to drop again, the more powerful horrors would start getting ejected from the world because they wouldn't be able to maintain their presence here anymore. And it would eventually be safe to go out. But there's still some horrors left, so part of the game is, to some degree, having to deal with some horrors that are left over and still around. And they're still horrifically dangerous, but at least they are, like, Cthulhu's gone and Dagon's gone, but you know, So some of the lesser horrors and some of the what they call horror constructs, which is like monsters made by the horrors, are still around and have to be dealt with. So there's Dagon's gone, but we still have to deal with the deep ones, so to speak,
Mm.
and horror cults. Also, they have all the races from Shadowrun because, like I said, this is the same story, but they have more of them because there's more magic. So the more wild and strange races, such as the Obsidian, are still around. You can be walking around made of living rock. Those guys are pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah. But as a side note, since they don't own Shadowrun anymore, they can't technically have it be connected to Shadowrun anymore. So FASA made a new game called 1879. Imagine if the backstory of Shadowrun happened roughly 150 years earlier than it did before. So the
Mm.
return of magic happens during Victorian England era. So in
Okay.
1878, magic returns to the world, and then gameplay starts a year later. So 1879. But the thing I like is they use the game mechanics that Earthdawn uses, which are much better than the Shadowrun game mechanics, in my opinion.
Mm.
And it also implies that one of the Earthdawn races might be extraplanar in origin. They have a race that was listed above. Some of the ones you're looking at now, these are all from extra books, I think. It's the first 8 that are the official ones that come in the main book, ending with Windling there.
Mm.
But one of the races called the Skrang there, they're basically humanoid saurid creatures. So like dino anthros, kind of.
Yeah.
But more specifically like Brontosaurus type. Like they're not yeah, like bring up that first picture there with the different heads on the side.
They look like Skeksis if they got their act together.
Skeksis without feathers. Yeah. They're very actually that's a good example picture of an adventure there because they're very swashbuckly type personalities. But something that happens in the 1879 game implies that these guys might originate from another world and ended up on Earth somehow, probably through some sort of portal. But yeah, they're pretty neat. They love water, so they tend to have settlements along rivers. So a lot of them are boatmen or quite literally swashbuckly types. Very flamboyant. They like to do a jig.
So, Earth Dawn is a unique approach to skill tests. Players wanting to perform an action determine their level or step for the skill, talent, or ability to be used. Step can be
Mm-hmm.
looked up in a list of dice to be thrown. It's the next highest integer of the average roll of the dice. Example: 2 6 dice
Mm-hmm.
will average yield result of 7. Bonus dice mechanic 4, and already my brain is turning to soup reading this.
You don't need to
Um,
worry about the bonus dice mechanic, really. The idea is they use all of the dice rather than just being like a d20 check for stuff.
mm,
So things are a bit less wildly random because, with if you're rolling a d20 for everything, you've got like it could be anywhere between 1 and 20 with equal chance of anything, right? Everything's a 5% chance of any given number. Whereas with Earthdawn, things start becoming multiple dice added together, so everything becomes like a bell curve where your results are more likely to be closer to the middle, whereas the extreme highs and extreme lows are less likely. So dice results don't swing quite so chaotically. You don't have like, oh, I've got a 1 in 20 chance of fumbling this every single time, no matter how good I am at it.
hmm, look at this.
I really like
Um,
that dice mechanic.
it got over halfway of the 50 most popular role playing games of all time, 1996. So,
Which is impressive because most of the time I bring this up with anybody, they've never heard of it. They don't market themselves super well, but people who have tried it absolutely love how the game mechanics work.
the pyramid
It's
also
also
agrees. Most underrated
It
games
also
of the
works a
last
little bit
century.
like White Wolf games in the sense that you, rather than leveling up, you earn XP, which you then spend to increase things the way you like, such as in Bloodlines. So you've got that free form character development.
Mm. It seems to be respected enough, but people weren't really thrilled with it at the time.
I think maybe that's a matter of a lot of people not knowing it was there. Like I was, uh, I was hanging out with a couple of friends of mine in the '90s. I don't remember exactly what year it was. Some point in the mid to late '90s, and we ended up in one of those hobby shops where, where these kinds of games are sold, and we saw Earthdawn on the shelf there, and we're like, "Oh,
Hmm.
this looks neat," and we were hooked on it ever since. Sadly, I haven't had many chances to actually play it, but because the problem is I love to play games like this, but I'm not good at winging things on the fly quickly and smoothly. I'm not a good GM type, and that's a problem when I want to play a game and I'm the only one who knows the system, but I don't want to GM it. I need to get somebody to GM it who doesn't know about it. And
It's
people
hard because
usually don't want
apparently,
to learn a whole new system just to run something from one person or
yeah.
on the recommendation of one person, I should say. I'm not asking them to run it just for me, but the other players won't know about it either.
Hey, anyone watching this VOD after the fact who was curious, who might be an old hat with the tabletop, reach out to Krendar here. You could
Yeah,
definitely appreciate it, I imagine.
yeah. And if you're curious about it but don't want to immediately buy a new source book out of it, you can get a PDF version for a much cheaper price.
Well, at least this one is still getting updated. Boop.
Yeah, but yeah, this is my favorite tabletop game of all time. It's not just like I said, what's interesting about the setting and the story to it, but also I just really like the game mechanics of like how you build up your character, how the abilities work, and that's another thing to this game too is every character, no matter what class you're playing, has magic in some way. There's only four of the classes. Like I think there's 13 or 14 classes in the book. Four of them are spellcasters, but even the ones that aren't have magic. Like the warrior channels magic in his fighting. The thief channels magic. The troubadour has magic. Sometimes it's magic that makes things easier to do, like are things you could do as a mundane skill, but they make them better. The thief has a couple of good examples on that. The lock picking. So the classes have an abilities called talents, which are most of them are mundane skills that have been enhanced by magic, but some of them are things you can only do with magic. But as an example of an enhancement, a thief using lock picking as a talent instead of as a skill, they're not even using like they don't even have to have physical lock picks. They form lock picks with their mind, like lock picks made of telekinetic force, and use that to pick the lock.
All right.
So they don't even have to have a lock picking kit on them. Or the move silently talent. Not only do you know how to sneak around as a skill, but they're actually generating small noise dampening fields around their feet while they're doing it. So it's easier to do because they can also increase the ranks more quickly. And other things. Do you remember that Antonio Banderas movie? It was called The 13th Warrior or something?
I remember the title.
Um, in that movie, he was kidnapped by some Norse warriors, and he learned during the boat
Yes,
voyage back.
with the
He
weird
learned their
trog people
language.
that eat. Yeah,
Yeah, remember how he learned their language just by observing them?
that's
But
right.
it was like kind of ridiculously fast, right?
Mm.
But you can do something even crazier with an Earthdawn. If you get speak language as a talent, you can encounter somebody speaking a language you don't know. And if you listen to them for 1 minute, you can then make a dice roll. If your dice roll succeeds, you are now fluent in that entire language.
Fuck you, dumb lingo. I'm
Because
gonna go
magic.
my own way.
Yeah, because language. And same for reading languages is another talent for read and write language. You can read one page and become fluent if you make a successful roll.
What is there a fail
Whereas,
state?
you know, the fail state is if you fail your roll, you can't try again with that particular language until you've increased the rank of that talent again.
That's not
So
bad as
basically,
a
like,
mechanic, but not fun.
it's not bad. It's like okay, go level up and then you can try it again.
But
Ideally, you're going to be on an adventure that does not hinge upon you learning this language immediately.
no. But it would have been good if, like, you've suddenly forgotten half of your own language and now you have to use roll for gestures with your hand to get your point across.
My intelligence score has been debuffed.
uh,
I forgot how to
uh.
talk good. that, that's me at a restaurant. I catch my server's eye from across the restaurant, raise my empty glass,
Yeah,
nod.
I've seen you. I can confirm.
Yep.
Um,
I don't
oh
remember if I
shit,
did that in Philly or not. I might have.
you did. But then
Probably at the
again,
diner.
yeah. Um, oh shit, my phone's about to die. And hell, so am I, because it's
Yeah.
almost 2 hours in.
Hmm.
So I guess unless there's anything else you want to talk about Earth
Yeah.
Dawn real quick, I guess we wrap it up here.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay.
Um,
So
it's
this
just a
was
very fun game. The step system is very interesting. Well, I'll give you a quick example of the step system before we go, because what you read was very vague. But like, if you think of like moving up from like one type of die to another, like going from a D6 to a D8 would be like one step up kind of thing, right? You could
mm,
describe it that way. And that's how their dice system works. It's like you have a step number that tells you what dice to roll. And when the step number goes up by one, that's basically it goes up to the next type of dice or the next combination of dice. So like going up a step could be like going from a D6 to a D8, D8 to a D10, D10 to a D12. But then they start going into multiple dice instead of going up to a D20 because that's a big jump and D20s are too chaotic. They try to avoid that. So you go from a D12 to 2D6 and a D6 to a D8, 2D8, D8 plus D10, 2D10, etc. So your dice are getting a little bit better and better each time you go up a step, which is what happens when you add ranks to your skills or things like that. But the reason they mention bonus dice is they have something called exploding dice. If you roll a maximum on whatever dice you're rolling, you get to roll another one and add it together.
damn, that could.
Which is the big reason why they consider 2d6 to be significantly better than 1d12, because the maximum is 12 in both cases. But a d6 is more likely to explode than a d12. And you got two of them.
Just gonna quickly show this. The artwork here that we're looking at here, it's very old school Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah, I don't know where these pictures you found came from. The top left one is definitely Earth Dawn. I don't recognize these other ones.
Oh, you're right. No, they
Oh, that's
are
a
just
Forgotten Realms thing.
yeah. Okay, so here.
But if we look at your direct Google results, all those things are Earth Dawn arts.
Mm.
One of those things was Elden Ring on the right. But yeah.
All right. Well, I'm starting to crash now, so I
Yeah.
guess
But
on
anyways,
this.
very fun game. I
Yeah.
recommend if you like high fantasy role playing, check this shit out. It is dope as hell.
Okay. Well then, and you want to promote your links in the doobly doo, and if anyone wants to after the fact reach out to you, just do so they can.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely do. Feel free to toss me a message on Discord or such if you want to talk about any of this stuff. Anybody in chat. But as far as promotion goes, I'm not really, at least for now, I haven't really been doing any streams other than Borderlands. So come check out the next episode of Borderlands coming soon.
Which is
In 8 days, I
the
believe.
yeah, I believe so too. Um, as for the next coffee and chat, well, for starters, much like UFF, if you think that you would be interested in talking about something you find interesting that's currently going on in this wild world that you think I might have a sprig of interest in, then do reach out. For example, last episode was about what's going on in Iran right now, and this episode is about a bunch of tabletop stuff. And I do it per month, so I don't have anyone planned for next month, but I have a few people in my head I can go out and ask. If you have a topic that you think I might be interested in, by all means, tell me. As for the next stream I am doing at all will be on basically 2 o'clock in the morning on the 9th of, which is Saturday, over on Debate Hub, because I'm going back onto rum and coke. And I actually have rum, but no coke. I wish I
Rum and
had
rum.
either. Oh, no, rum and ginger ale, which is gonna make my.
Oh.
I just realized it's gonna make Mike have
That's
some hard heartburn in the morning. Oh wow!
probably. You might want to
Spiced
have some
rum.
food alongside that.
I have a big old meal plan to prep beforehand, but tomorrow I might go out and get a
Something to
mixer
help
that would
absorb
be
those
less.
acids.
Something that might be less harsh on me, because at this point in my life, my little tummy tum, which is getting littler by the day, can't quite handle the
Kudos.
alcoholic torrent. Thank you. That I once could, and as a result, I should think about at the very least getting some just regular old carbonated water, just as a mixer, or
Mm,
maybe actually I should go and look to see what would be good as a good mixer to spice rum.
yeah.
Something I have to think about for tomorrow. But yeah, next UFF, not planned, but as you said, we have Borderlands next week. Simpsons Sunday on Sunday. Oh, Monday. I have two people, one of which is Dapper, another is someone's on Chesh's Discord whose name I can never pronounce. We are coming here to play some Space Marine 2. So that should be
Yeah.
a good laugh. And
Fun little game, that one.
I absolutely love the main story, so I'm looking forward to playing the co-op side missions. Then
They
UFF,
really they really captured the feel of 40K quite well, I feel like.
they did indeed. UFF Magicus on the 12th, we were playing Final Fantasy V, and that might very well be the end of it because we plan to give a very chunky stream, that one.
Nice.
Fingers crossed. Then I believe Chesh is right after. No, not Chesh. That is Feel Good right after for another episode of Vampire the Masquerade.
Mm.
Then Borderlands. Then, well, at that point, I don't need to keep on going. But if I am right, it is
Yeah.
also Simpsons and Chesh on Sunday. So, yay.
Making up for some lost feel good time there, eh?
Yeah, well, they've been pretty busy. They have a music thing coming out this month.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm sure there's reasons why there was the gap in feel good's UFF there. Yeah.
a lot going on in Feel Good's life. But I'm planning to meet them up for a bite to eat week after next, I do believe.
Cool. Nice.
Uh,
Nice.
all right. Well, not much else to say except I want to go to bed. So it's been great fun, but we're out of here. You take care and bye.
Night.